What's going on, Chase?
What is up? Are you excited for the first Series 8 battles of the ATX VGC channel?
I am super pumped for Series 8 here, a brand new rule set. To those of y'all who haven't been paying a ton of attention to the last week or so, maybe you've been a little bit busy. I know I have been, but still, the Series 8 rule set is now live. It is similar to the Battle of Legends rule set, a tournament that we actually featured one battle of on stream here way back right before that tournament happened. I don't even remember when that was, but the format basically allows for one restricted legendary. The main difference from Battle of Legends is that you don't get the option of a mythical like Zera Aura or Magirna, so that's kind of the main difference here. But I'm super excited to see how this goes.
Yeah, I am as well, and we start off with two teams that are archetypes you're probably going to be seeing a lot in this format. Torn Ogre versus Torn Ogre right off the bat. You're generally going to see Torn Ogre plus Grass type as a big thing going, and we see Torn Ogre with double Grass type with the Kartana and Amoonguss, along with the Incineroar and Regieleki. And on the opposite side, we see Torn Ogre plus Rillaboom, and then Metagross, Kingdra, and Raichu as the last one.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is. I know that in the very early meta that's starting to develop here, we've already seen two tournaments been won by a Torn Ogre combo, or has it been all three?
I believe two of them. I know Turtle won the first one, and then Nestor won the second one, both using the same Torn Ogre Kingdra team, which, by the way, Turtle Mania did make that, and I think if one of the other casters can drop a link to that video, I think it's a very insightful video on the team report of that. So apparently Rollercoaster is saying all three of them were won by Torn Ogre, two of them by the Torn Ogre Kingdra team Turtle Mania made.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. So there is a really big difference between these two teams that we're seeing here. With that Raichu having Lightning Rod as the redirection, obviously Regieleki's speed lowering move in Electro Web can't be completely removed, but it does kind of mitigate some of the bigger potential damage there onto the Kyogre from Gil's, Gil not being able to be as reliant on that Regieleki. So we see here Izzy, she leads with Tornadus and Raichu, a really strong combination, alongside the Incineroar plus Regieleki.
Yeah, I think Gil has like an incredible aesthetic to this team already. We have the Incineroar, the Tree Master, and the shiny Regieleki paired with each other. I think you do get style points in this. It doesn't help you win the game, but you do get style points to impress the people watching, I will say.
No, I will say, and that Tree Master is not the easiest thing to get. You gotta really grind out that battle tree. I tried to get that with my Terrakion before the women's tournament before Series 6, and I only was able to get like Tree Expert. I wasn't able to get it to the full 50 game win streak.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to go play through Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon to be able to at least get that for some of my Pokemon, because I definitely want for like some of these big tournaments coming up to be able to have the Tree Master and all the old ribbons. So
yeah, really well played there from Izzy on turn number 1, going for that fake out. Thanks so much for the 5-month resubscription, Sir Wilson. One of our very first subscribers, longtime friend, longtime battler, longtime commentator as well. Super excited to have Will continuing to subscribe here with us.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, back when the Discord was only 5 people and not the near 200 that we currently have, Will was one of the original 5. So thank you for sticking along even when things have gotten busy, and glad to see you're still here around with us playing Pokemon. And what, are you game 3 tonight for Will?
I believe Will is indeed. Sir Wilson is game 3. So here we see the Raichu actually opting to Volt Switch out after the taunt went off last turn into that Regieleki. Kind of anticipating, I think that Izzy thought that Regieleki might switch out, given the fact that last turn it was taunted and it can't go for really a single target electric move with that Raichu on the field.
Yeah, and smartly for Gil targeting the Tornadus with the parting shot, as if it targeted the Metagross, it wouldn't be able to switch out this turn, giving a little bit more momentum than you would otherwise had, and Kyogre's kind of free to come in right here and start doing damage, I'll say.
Yeah, for sure. The thing is, Gil right now is behind on the Tailwind, but has the ability to potentially stagger that Tailwind and be able to have the Tailwind up for longer than Izzy does, depending on when this happens right here.
Yeah. Oh, Squiddo, thank you for the follow. Has Squiddo been around with us longer than following? I mean, that's pretty impressive, I've got to say.
Yeah.
But thank you for the follow. But yeah, so with the Torn Alecki on one end and the Torn Metagross on the other end, we might see a Raichu switch in here and make it Electric type plus Torn on both sides of the field, I might say. But no, instead we see the Metagross Dynamax, actually.
Yeah, interesting play here. With this Metagross getting its Dynamax up, probably going to go for something like a Brutal Swing here from that from that Torn as its last shot, going ahead and getting the Weakness Policy proc onto the Metagross.
Oh, and it looks like Squiddo is on an alt, so that makes a lot more sense.
That makes sense. Well, we appreciate the follow. Interesting interaction here because Izzy's Tornadus already went for the Tailwind. It was able to get the taunt off before Gil's Tornadus. And that's a pretty big Volt Switch from that Regieleki, getting the critical hit, getting a bunch of extra damage down onto Metagross.
Yeah, and at this point, like, it's all about smart targeting from this Metagross because, yeah, it can do a lot of damage with its Steel Spikes and then eventually maybe boosted Steel Spikes if we see the Weakness Policy. But if it's again, Hailstorming into something, I would assume this is the Tornadus. But if it gets any calls wrong here, then it could be kind of a waste of a Dynamax. At this point, though, you do have the speed advantage for the rest of the match with Gil not being able to get up Tailwind. And Tailwind still being a factor on Izzy's side of the field. So it'll be interesting to see if Gil can kind of recover here and offset the damage from the speed control difference.
Yeah, for sure. Really interesting with that Metagross not able to have its stats dropped. This Regieleki can't even go for something like an Electro Web to try and slow it down. Interesting that we didn't see, we haven't seen the Kyogres come out just yet from either of these two players, but I think really smart trying to delay it and use it at just the right time.
Yeah, I would agree here. And the big thing here is there's not really a max Quake switch in on Gil's side of the field. You're either going to take it with your Alecki, you're going to take it with your Incineroar, or you're going to have to switch in your Kyogre and take probably like 35 to 40% if it's not boosted.
Yeah. A really scary positioning because if that Tornadus is carrying Brutal Swing at this point, it's incredibly free just to go for it, get that Weakness Policy proc, and yeah, like you said, there's no switch-ins for Max Quake here. Rillaboom being the closest thing.
Yeah, I will say, because of the Electro Web, I believe this Metagross might be faster than the Tornadus. So we do actually see the Tornadus switch out instead into Raichu, calling potentially a Volt Switch instead of an Electro Web and just drawing it in, as we do see the Volt Switch. And yeah, this Regieleki is stuck in to get Quaked if that's what Izzy so chooses to do.
Yep. A really smart play there with Izzy forcing that Regieleki to stay in here and say, if you want to avoid the Max Quake, you're going to have to switch out. Like, you can't go for the Volt Switch if I go for bringing in this Lightning Rod Pokemon. Now with an extra Speed F boost onto... It's really only going to matter on the Metagross. It's not going to matter too much on that Raichu.
I will say you can get surprisingly bulky on Pokemon with these Max Quake boosts, or like Snarl drops and things of that sort. I've had my like Tornadus survive a like Max Geyser from Kyogre and things of the sort if you get enough boosts and drops. So potentially this Raichu could survive something like a Max Geyser from Kyogre with another Quake boost. But we'll just have to see coming up how this goes.
Yeah, for sure. So now the first Kyogre out on the field, we see the shiny Kyogre going and resetting the weather here with the inability to switch into that Incineroar. Look, it looks like Gil wanted to. You can't quite parting shot back into yourself.
Yeah.
And, now this Incineroar is a really, really risky shot, but even if, Izzy decides to target the Kyogre instead to get some more boosts, I don't know, it feels almost just like target down the Kyogre, all my friends are dead, and then try and clean up with your own Kyogre in the end.
Yeah, I would tend to think that that's probably the best way to go about it. You would assume Izzy's Kyogre might not have an electric move, especially because there's a Raichu on her team. But also, speaking of shiny Kyogre, something we can tease very quickly is thanks to Chloe in the Discord, Shift Happens VGC, she is allowing us to give away a shiny Kyogre from Pokemon Go as a, I guess, prize for the ladder tournament we will be holding later this week. It is not live currently. It should go live sometime during this stream. So later on the stream, we'll pop back in and kind of give a little bit of an explanation on how you can sign up. But I will say, if you join the Discord, you will be able to have access to that. And it is open to anybody. It should be Thursday evening, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Time. But yeah, back to the game as we see the Incineroar get pretty much taken off the field pretty quickly.
Yeah, with the fake out from the Raichu guaranteeing that the Incineroar can't go for a fake out and getting a second Max Quake boost into that Raichu, this Kyogre is now going to go for the Max Geyser in the rain into the Metagross and go ahead and remove that from the field. But now it has to deal with this Raichu.
Yeah. And at this point, I mean, maybe it's doable. Maybe you can take care of the opposing Kyogre, but I think the combination of Raichu plus Kyogre will almost always beat Kyogre, even with one having max and the other one not having the max. Yeah. But it should be interesting to find out.
Yeah, the other thing I think will be interesting is, I don't know my Kyogre calcs particularly well yet, but seeing the item on this Kyogre right here being the Mystic Water, having that ability to boost water type attacks by another, 20% on those items, right?
20%.
Yeah, so I think that could potentially start to change some of the calculations. But now with this Raichu at +2, we don't know the item on it. It's potentially could be something like an Assault Vest, in which case +2 defense plus an Assault Vest, it might still live this Max Geyser in the rain.
Yeah, I would say you're either going to have an Assault Vest or a Focus Sash on it, in which case you will probably survive no matter what. The thing is, Raichu's only attacking move could potentially be Volt Switch, and you probably don't want to Volt Switch here. So potentially you're going for a Nuzzle or an Eerie Impulse or something, whatever you have. And just kind of stalling out one more turn of this Kyogre's Dynamax and bringing in your own Kyogre once it's safe to bring that in.
Yep, and we actually see Electro Web revealed from that from that Raichu there. So not carrying something potentially like Nuzzle or Eerie Impulse, because both those would feel like better options in this scenario. But you do go ahead and lower that speed, as well as get yourself a chance for the confusion with the Hurricane. And we do see the item reveal here with the Raichu hanging on 1 HP with that Focus Sash, free to go for another double up attack here and allow Izzy to bring in her own, we assume her own Kyogre in the back.
As we actually see a Volt Switch this turn, a really smart play, potentially expecting the Hellstorm to take out both Pokemon, and now you can bring your own Raichu back in the next turn after the Tornadus goes down and have your Kyogre in pretty much for free at full HP.
Yep, another Hurricane comes off here. It connects, obviously because of the rain, 100% guaranteed, and now the Hailstorm will come out, just like you said, into this Tornadus, and will be enough to pick up the KO. Tornadus not benefiting from any of those special defense boosts that Raichu was, so going to be easily taken off from that super effective move, and more importantly, removing the weather and setting the hail as opposed to the rain that otherwise would have been up.
Yeah, this could get kind of interesting now, because the Kyogre, if it has Protect, can just protect itself and let the Raichu go down. It was smart of Izzy to try to reestablish Fake Out pressure, but it kind of failed to account for the fact that Protect will just nullify the Fake Out pressure and have the Raichu go down, so there really wasn't anything you could do about that. Potentially, if Izzy knows she doesn't have Thunder, and maybe thinks Gil does have Thunder, making it to where Rain isn't the condition on the field makes it to where you have a better chance of dodging Thunders. But at this point, it should be full HP Kyogre versus half HP Kyogre, and it comes down to the combination of probably hitting Origin Pulses, having an Electric type move, which I would assume neither of these Kyogres have at this point, and seeing how things go from there.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing that's important is the HP differential going for moves like Water Spout, as well as the fact that Gil's Kyogre is -1 speed from the Electro Web earlier on from that Raichu, so pretty much going to be guaranteeing that Izzy's Kyogre should be moving first and going to have the opportunity to go for some damage here into Gil's Kyogre first every single time.
Yeah. And yeah, the ability to Water Spout for free at probably somewhere around like 90% HP and take it down into Hail range should seal this game up, even with an Ice Beam Freeze, which Gil was going for as like the one kind of late game win condition. But even now, it's not enough.
Yeah, the Hail actually going to go ahead and be the end of Gil's Kyogre on this turn here, and that seals up game number 1 for Izzy. Really well played by both of our trainers. I think we saw something that we're going to be seeing a lot of here in Series 8, at least in the early meta, the Kyogre, the Tornogre mirror match, and kind of whose Tornogre is best set up.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the dynamic of Tornogre, though, because you want to keep weather control versus opposing teams, correct? But your only other attacking move other than a Max Geyser changes the weather. So it could be interesting to see potentially if Kyogres are going to opt away from Ice Beam and opt for something like Thunder and run double Water Move Thunder or Water Move Thunder Calm Mind Protect, depending on how they go. Or maybe you just find Kyogre to be a non-max option more often than not and focus on your water spouts while maxing something else.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely gonna, lead to some different play around if both teams are trying to focus that Kyogre as the Dynamax target. It really comes down to kind of how it's gonna work best. I really like Izzy's adaptation of going ahead and getting the Metagross going. Getting those Max Quake boosts could potentially be huge. For any potential survivability. I know that early on we saw the crit Volt Switch with the Raichu. The Raichu wasn't on the field at that point, but the crit Volt Switch doing a bunch of damage into the Metagross. Obviously not in a position that you want to be to where maybe where that Metagross could have been in a better position to continue on for the rest of this battle. But yeah, really excited here. I'm gonna go ahead and update the score. Forgot to do that.
Yeah, very quickly though, this shows kind of the dynamic of having only a single restricted and having a Dynamax as two separate things as opposed to as one total thing. And Izzy kind of shows that you can play a game where your main focus isn't your restricted Pokemon and it just cleans up in the back. Because potentially Dynamaxing something other than your restricted gives you a second pseudo restricted, while as Dynamaxing your restricted Pokemon kind of limits you to over centralizing around one individual Pokemon.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's super interesting of like, how do you make this as GS Cup like as possible? How do you try and make one of your non restricteds broken? It's one of those things where teams that will tend to run Zacian don't have to worry as much because Zacian will never Dynamax. You literally can't Dynamax it. So I think it's something where could be really interesting, kind of depending on how things go for the remainder of this meta. We do see a change up here from Gil opting instead of bringing, I think it was the Incineroar maybe he didn't have this time around, I might have missed that, but we do see the Kartana brought as an adjustment to the last game, and just gonna be a turn 1 Dynamax here.
Yeah, if this Metagross isn't Dynamaxing in return or isn't switching out in return, which as we see it's not, it's going to be taking a lot of damage from this 150 base power Max Geyser, which is 1.2 times boosted from the Mystic Water and 1.5 times boosted from Rain.
Yeah, gonna be in a really rough spot here. I think it's going to be interesting also to see, what does this Raichu go for? Does it anticipate the switch out from that from the Torn and maybe ignore the fake out there and maybe go for something like a Nuzzle to try and ensure that this Metagross will be moving first?
Yeah, honestly, something like an Electroweb and Max Guard here would put you in an incredible position to the next turn, then Brutal Swing and Max Quake, if that's an option. But as we just see a Volt Switch into the Kyogre, getting out of the, pretty much just Volt Switching right on out of there, switching in something else safe in, and leaving your Metagross open to a Max Geyser. Yeah,
this is potentially going to be a really big Max Geyser for Gil here, establishing this pressure here on turn number 1. Dynamaxing Kyogre turn 1, and I think it is our first time, because, oh my gosh, that does 90% to a Dynamax Metagross, and this Metagross is now also going to be just going for the Max Hailstorm into what was the Torn, and it gets 50%
That does so much to that
Kartana. Yeah, it really does. I'd expect Kartana to kind of take that a little bit better. I guess since this is an Assault Vest variant, perhaps not as invested in HP. Most of them aren't anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating Metagross's damage output. But at this point, like, you kind of just traded half of a non-max Pokemon for almost all of a max Pokemon. So if you're Gil, you're really liking your positioning, I would assume here.
Yeah.
You do still have to deal with that Raichu in the back, and you don't have your Kartana anymore, which kind of walled it. So it should be interesting to see exactly how Gil wants to go about preserving Pokemon in the back to beat the Raichu, because you know your Regieleki just cannot touch it at all.
Yeah, Izzy, with that Volt Switch, bringing the Torn out, is now in a position where she can just go for the Tailwind. It looked like what she wanted to do was potentially delay that Tailwind by 1 turn by being the second person to get it up, anticipating that Gil would have gone for Tailwind first with his. But here it is going to go ahead and at least knock this Kartana out. Obviously, one of the scariest things for an opposing Kyogre to see is that Kartana facing it down. The next scariest thing is an electric type, so.
Yeah. And this Tornadus is, it actually is going to survive this turn now that this Max Geyser changes the weather. And This is actually not that bad of a position for Izzy, all things considered, because you haven't lost a Pokemon, and you've, after this turn, completely stalled out the Dynamax of Gil's side of the field. The one issue is that this Regieleki is going to be faster than this Metagross, even with Tailwind up.
Yeah, it definitely will be. I think the scariest part too is you can't even go for something like a self-proc. Self-proc probably knocks yourself out, so you can't go for something like Brutal Swing into like Max Quake. But yeah.
I wonder if potentially this Tornadus is carrying something like an Icy Wind. I don't think it would have like the coverage for it, so I think you just go for like a Hurricane Confusion onto Regieleki.
We do see that. It looks like the Hurricane's coming out into this Regieleki. Not very effective move, but really going for that secondary effect, and that is 3 for 3 with no confusion. Not even setting confusion, much less getting the confusion knockout.
Yeah, I've got to say, this Tornadus being good and being able to run Hurricane consistently is just about my least favorite thing about this format. Everything else I'm really enjoying, but I know Rollercoaster and I were on a call the other day, and we were like doing some like tournament battles on Showdown, and he was like, "What's my play here?" And I was like, "Oh, you just Hurricane Confusion you Hurricane full Confusion the Moltres," and he immediately clicks Hurricane, gets the confusion, gets the full confusion. Game over. We won.
Yep, that's one way to swing the dynamic here. So that is a big turn of events there on that turn, with both of these Pokemon going down, only getting a little bit of chip onto the Regieleki. Izzy's now going to be forced into her last 2 Pokemon, likely going to be that Kyogre. But the good thing is she doesn't have to deal with an opposing Dynamax Kyogre, and she has her own Tailwind up.
Yeah, no, I think it's a pretty interesting position here with, you have the Raichu in the back establishing fake out pressure. And honestly, at this point, you kind of have to hope Hailstorm KOs, and Rillaboom being the last one, actually.
That's
again,
actually
showing
really
you don't need your your restricted Pokemon in every single matchup. This is a thing that kind of you start to figure out later on as the formats go, and a lot of the top players from previous formats talk about is, yeah, you just don't need to bring your restricted Pokemon to everything. And at this point, you have to assume that something like a Fake Out into Tornadus and a Grassy Glide into Regieleki is coming, and there's very little you can do about it.
Yeah, I think kind of the scariest thing, I mean, if you're Gil, you're not going to get anything out of Tailwind here. Functionally, you're more likely to get some damage off onto that opposing Rillaboom with a Hurricane. I think you're in a better overall position, just because that Rillaboom having access to Grassy Glide with no means of changing the terrain. The max has been used up. There are no Pokemon that you brought that can change terrain, so it's free to just go for Grassy Glides for the rest of the game, because no other priority moves can shut it down.
We see the Kyogre immediately protect, trying to maybe waste one turn of this Rillaboom, as we see the Raichu fake out the Torn, as we kind of expected, and we'll probably see a Grassy... we actually see a knockoff into the Torn, calling the Kyogre protect. And if this is something like an Assault Vest Rillaboom, it's going to survive a Hurricane from this Torn, and it'll get the chance to Grassy Glide multiple times into this Kyogre.
Yeah, for sure. And now this Raichu also, presumably, Gil can go for something like Tailwind to move first, but the Raichu can just continue to go for attacks into that Torn, and let the Rillaboom just go for the Grassy Glide into the partner, whether it's, a Regieleki that's not going to really want to take this Grassy Glide, or this, the Regieleki that's switching in, or the Kyogre that's going to take super effective damage.
Yeah, and I mean, the Regieleki survives this turn, but if the Tornadus can't survive this attack, which it does, so we could potentially see something here, but nope, this Rillaboom is not going to even get to it KO'd by this Hurricane after Grassy Terrain recovery.
Yeah.
And now you just have a free Volt Switch and Grassy Glide once again.
Yeah, it should be a double knockout here, short of, going for Protect, which I don't think either of these Pokemon are carrying. Yeah, pretty rough positioning, I think, here for Gil.
Yeah.
I like the idea of trying to stall out the Grassy Terrain from this Rillaboom, trying to basically, that once your Kyogre comes back in, you get at least one turn of Protect, or you could potentially Protect through a Grassy Glide. But if your opponent takes a double KO here, which of these Pokemon are you going to have to focus down on? You're going to have to go for Origin Pulse and hope that it's enough, and into, 2 Pokemon that... A Rillaboom's going to take that Origin Pulse pretty healthily. Yeah. You really have to go for the Ice Beam into it.
Yeah, so we see the Grassy Glide take out this Regieleki. We're probably going to see the Volt Switch. Yeah, we see the Volt Switch take out the Tornadus. And the thing is, if Izzy, you don't even really have to go for a Grassy Glide once terrain is up and hope you survive. You can just Electro Web and Wood Hammer.
That's true.
If you have the Wood Hammer, that is. If you only have Grassy Glide, Knockoff, Fake Out, and something like U-Turn, then it's a little bit tougher because Grassy Glide outside of terrain doesn't KO. But also at the same time, Grassy Glide plus Volt Switch plus whatever. You're not going to get KO'd by the combination of things.
Yeah. It'd be interesting too, potentially, if this Raichu is carrying something like Thunder. I don't think it is. I don't think it has the room for it, but getting the 100% accuracy set by me switching in Kyogre wouldn't feel great.
Yeah, we've seen Volt Switch, Electro Web, and Fake Out.
Yeah.
I would tend to guess that the last one is one of Charm or Eerie Impulse, because we've seen Focus Sash and not something like Assault Vest, and yeah, this Kyogre should just be going down here, as it does actually survive. It's a very bulky Kyogre.
Yeah, it does survive one Grassy Glide, but the combination of Grassy Glide plus Volt Switch gonna be enough to go ahead and take out that Kyogre, as Izzy proving here in game number 1 of our very first best of 3 in series 8. You don't have to bring your you don't have to max your restricted. You can just use it as bait.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I think we're going to see as the format goes on that there's going to be a lot of times where, because of Dynamax being a thing, you don't actually have to bring your restricted to bad matchups, and that lets you run things like Ho-Oh or other like fire types and not have to bring them to the Kyogre matchup as long as the rest of your team is like super solid in that regard. So it'll be really interesting to see where we go from here and how this metagame sort of develops, and even how like the thought process about playing